It is very good afternoon. It is Niall Boylan with you for the next hour or so. Now, I have two things to get to, by the way, but they're kind of interlinked in some way. And we're going to do that. But the first, by the way, I do want to apologise. As you know, yesterday we had a repeat on. The reason was, as you might have noticed, I cut the show a little bit short on Monday because I had an episode of sciatica, which I will never ever experience again, I hope, because I ended up in A&E. It was the worst pain I've ever had in my life. But it did start on the show, and it was something to do with the way I was sitting. You might have noticed we had to go to the test card for the rest of the show halfway through because I couldn't get myself comfortable on the seat. I ended up on my back for the whole day. I ended up then in a situation where my whole leg went numb and in terrible pain, a pain like I've never experienced, and I had to call an ambulance. So that's how bad things were. Thankfully, I feel a lot better now with a lot of painkillers and a lot of medication. So if anyone has any cure, by the way, for sciatica, I would gladly accept it. You can comment on WhatsApp on 085 100 22 55. Now, the first thing I want to get to, and they are kind of interlinked, right? And I just want to read this out first, and then I'm going to come to Councillor Malachy Steenson in relation to this, but also in relation to something else as well, in comments that he made to Grip Media. But Elon Musk and Sir Keir Starmer have clashed after the tech boss claimed that Britain was heading for civil war. The billionaire and owner of X, formerly known as Twitter, provoked a row at Downing Street over the riots that have engulfed UK cities amid accusations that social media is fueling the unrest. In a comment on his social media site about the violence, Elon Musk said civil war is inevitable, a remark that was explicitly rejected by the Prime Minister's official spokesperson, who said there was no justification for it and considered it incitement. The government has accused social media companies of fueling the protests, which were prompted by false claims spread online that the suspect in the killing of the three girls in Southport was an asylum seeker, according to Downing Street. And on Monday, that action taken by social media companies, there was no action taken by social media companies to tackle the misleading and inflammatory material. And they don't go far enough, according to Downing Street. Yesterday, the Taoiseach Simon Harris also said the laws of the land apply to online just as much as offline, kind of echoing what Keir Starmer said. The Taoiseach went on to say there can be no hiding place for anyone seeking to threaten, attack or harm or incite others to do so in online, assumingly. That's according to the Taoiseach, Simon Harris, who is kind of more or less just parroting what Keir Starmer has said. Now, many have defended Elon Musk and said that Musk's comments were commonly held opinions and certainly not incitement, and Musk himself said that. Musk has been criticised over his role of X in the riots and immigration protests, both Northern Ireland, Ireland, and in Great Britain as well. And those who condemn Twitter say it's being used to spread misinformation and encourage violence and protest, which turns into riots. After last week's stabbings, as I said, of the three children, a lot of people were saying the perpetrator was just off the boat in the last year and was in an asylum centre and he was a Muslim. This turned out to be completely untrue, by the way, but it wasn't enough for some people who decided they believed it and went out and caused a lot of riots. Now, the British have also blamed the influential people like Nigel Farage and, of course, the EDL or former EDL leader Tommy Robinson, who have millions of followers who believe everything, I suppose, they say. Now, the argument against the government suggesting that this is kind of incitement is that, you know, Twitter is a very important place for people to get information, as well as, sadly, misinformation as well. And if it was closed down, which the government would love to happen tomorrow, the public would have very little, if no, information. So there's a kind of double-edged sword. So the question I'm kind of asking you today is, do you think X and social media in general does more harm than good, or does it do more good than harm? Let me know what you think. Does X and social media do more harm than good, or is it the other way around? Let me know what you think. The number is 085 100 22 55. That's 085 100 22 55. Now, as you know, of course, there was riots in Britain, but also in Northern Ireland. Of course, they've seen their fair share of violence over the last few days. Now, Councillor Malachy Steenson rejected the attempt by elements of the media and the Southern establishment to link himself personally, as well as the broader protest movement against their failed immigration policy, to the Loyalists. He said his views were echoed by other councillors and the candidates who were associated with protests around the asylum accommodation and by the local people who were supportive of such protests. Mr. Steenson also said that the overwhelming sentiment would appear to be extremely critical of those who actually travelled to Belfast. You would expect him to say that he supported the Kulak says no people that went up there, but he doesn't. And he joins me on the line to tell us why. Malachy, hi, how are you?
Good afternoon, Niall.
Okay, Malachy, there was a lot of commentary around it, and some of the commentary I seen was, isn't it marvellous to see, the tricolour and the Union Jack beside each other in unison, something governments have been trying to do for years and didn't achieve. Not that anybody, by the way, supports the rioting, but certainly they supported the idea that these people could actually get together and have a common enemy.
Well, firstly, we need to take that apart a little bit. Now, certainly there's no difficulty in people involving themselves with working class Protestants, for instance, in the 6 counties, who are of like mind to ourselves. But that's not what happened on Saturday. What happened on Saturday was a small number of people, a very small number of people, no more than half a dozen, I would suggest, a dozen at the most, went up claiming to be representing Coolock Says No, and were involved in a loyalist rally. Now, loyalism and nationalism or republicanism are totally alien to each other. One seeks the domination of the Crown in the 6 counties and would, in fact, rather the Crown control the whole island, whereas Republicans and nationalists believe in the sovereignty of our own nation and that we determine our own destiny, the people of Ireland, not influenced by either Britain, Washington, or Brussels. So we need to look at it in that context. Now, we saw all of these comments from the left and from all of these media watchers and all of these people who are paid NGOs by the state to do so-called monitoring of what's happening on social media and all of that. Mm-hmm. Now, I have never met Tommy Robinson. I have been accused of. People said that they saw me in Belfast on Saturday. I was nowhere near Belfast on Saturday, nor was anybody I know. Now, the elements within Coolock, and some of them are not even from Coolock, who went to Belfast, were not representative of the Coolock Says No committee or protest. And, Coolock Says No has put out its own statement saying that these people didn't represent them. And I mean, those particular people who were involved in this, because in a sense, people have equal opportunities to attack me. And I've been attacked by those people and threatened just as regularly as I've been threatened by people on the so-called left. So, and it's interesting when Simon Harris talks about threats to politicians, he was remarkably silent when there were threats against me. And in fact, unlike himself, they were a bit more than somebody posting a comment on social media. I mean, there are people before the courts in relation to the attempts on me.
Well, look, I posted in relation to that comment that Simon Harris went yesterday. Mind you, one thing I disagree with Simon Harris on, he said that politicians shouldn't be dehumanised or abused online. Now, of course, politicians should never be threatened online. That goes without saying, right? But they shouldn't be dehumanised or abused online. Look, if you're not used to taking abuse as a politician...
Well, you see, what Simon Harris and the political class, what the political class in this country believe that any condemnation or any questioning of them by ordinary decent people is to be banned, and that's what this is all about. They wouldn't be opposed to X and Elon Musk, for instance, if he was just parroting, as it was before Elon Musk took it over, government views. But because people have an outlet now to actually say what they think, as opposed to being told what to think, They can't handle it, and they know, you see.
So before you come to that, let me just get back to what happened in Belfast. There are people who would suggest, Malachy, I don't know the individuals that went up and represented Coolock, or didn't represent Coolock Says No, but went up with the banner Coolock Says No. I don't know them. But there are people who suggest that, okay, in principle, obviously loyalists and Republicans don't agree with each other and their goals are very different. But there is a common goal, isn't there, when it comes to the United Kingdom? And I'm not referring to rioters because we all must condemn violence and rioting. But when it comes to protest, there is a common goal between United Kingdom, Northern Ireland and Ireland, where we should be unified in the fact that we believe, that both countries are making huge mistakes when it comes to a chaotic immigration policy.
Yes, I mean, and that conversation will take place, Niall. But that's slightly different to what happened on Saturday, which was a response to what happened in Southport, the horrific stabbing of and murder of 3 children. I mean, we almost had the same thing. Thankfully, the 3 children here who were stabbed didn't die. But, and people will react to that, Niall. And, it's a bit rich for some of the people who are condemning the rioting in Belfast, who for 40 years sent young fellas out on a regular basis to do the very same thing. And I take anything they say with a grain of salt. And I listen to them. This is the first time I recall that Belfast City Council was recalled to discuss this issue. And I see that they brought out various statements about racism and all of that, and some young child who shouldn't have been attacked, and I don't know who attacked them or whatever today. But the very same people have nothing up to now to say about the murder of Noah Donoghue, who was killed in a racially motivated attack by loyalists.
That's speculation. Obviously, that's speculation. You're speculating in relation to the cause of his death. I mean, the police obviously in Northern Ireland will say they've investigated and that, and they haven't come to the same conclusion.
Well, they're the only people who haven't, Niall, because everybody else knows that Noah Donoghue was murdered. They know that he didn't end up in a storm drain which was inaccessible.
Look, there is no doubt there were huge mistakes made in relation to the investigation of Noah Donoghue, i.e., for example, some of the evidence was destroyed, the evidence was contaminated. There was a lot of huge mistakes made, and I only spoke recently.
No, they found his laptop in the home of a senior loyalist. That's why it was covered up. So, people who fake shock and horror about things now, for what is a huge amount of this rioting right around both in Britain and here is recreational rioting. And you have young lads in their early teens with nothing else to do who are just taking on the cops.
Getting back to social media, now you've seen Keir Starmer has said he's going to get tough with people online. Already people have been arrested for comments they've made online on Facebook or Twitter, whatever it is. I'm assuming insightful stuff, telling people where to meet for riots or whatever it happens to be. I'm assuming that's what they're talking about. You've got Simon Harris now reiterating in a press statement from Merrion Square yesterday. And he said, where was that? I have it here. Am I thinking? Oh, yeah. So he turned around, Simon Harris, and said, the laws of the land apply to online just as much as offline. There can be no hiding place for anyone seeking to threaten, attack or harm people or incite others to do so. In other words, repeating more or less what Keir Starmer said. This is all in relation, it's kicked off, of course, with Elon Musk when he said that civil war was inevitable, referring to the British riots. Now, do you think that saying civil war was inevitable, firstly, is that incendiary? Is that incitement? Or is that just a commonly held opinion?
Well, I think it's a factual statement of where we are at present, and I don't think it's just confined to the UK. If you look at America, if you look at Germany, if you look at Sweden, if you look at France, if you look at Ireland, right around Europe, we are on the verge of something huge. And it's people like me who are actually the moderates in this, who are trying to hold back and say, look, we need to stop.
But they would accuse you of being. They would accuse you of being incendiary. They would accuse you of being the one that's organising these protests. Yeah,
of course they do, Niall. And in November 2022, when we said people are getting off planes in this country with no identifying documents, we were called lawyers, we were called fascists, we were called every name under the sun. Yet a month later, they admitted that. We said most people were coming into this country having lived in the UK for 10 and 15 years. They now admit that's true. So the only difference between what I say, which is allegedly inflammatory and which is allegedly a lie and unfactual, and what the government then accepts as the position, is about 6 months.
In relation to social media, I mean, what happened in Britain, for example, kicked off after the 3 children were stabbed, sadly lost their lives. Within 10 minutes of that happening online, I saw the comments online. Oh, the guy that did this is just off the boat from Nigeria or somewhere or whatever. I don't know where they were saying he was off the boat from. And he's living in an asylum centre and he's a Muslim. Turned out all to be completely untrue. He was born in Cardiff.
You're right, Niall. Yes, he did have a very Welsh name.
I'm not suggesting he had a Welsh name. He's second generation.
Traditional Welsh name.
Yeah. He was born. Well, he was born in Britain. But obviously his family were originally immigrants. I'm not suggesting they weren't.
The problem with this, Niall, is multiculturalism does not work.
Yeah, but go back to the question of that. No, hang on. Let's get back to what I'm talking about, okay? So they're saying that, that Musk or social media allowed that misinformation, which was put out. The name was even incorrect. They put out the original name was incorrect. They put out, and that he was only off the boat a year ago, and that he was a Muslim. And that, in turn, inflamed the initial riots, which started the whole thing off.
How many times are the print media and the broadcast media in this country, or in the UK, or right throughout Europe, before the courts in defamation and libel cases? They are there regularly. So there's no, these paragons of virtue who tell us, their truth is the true truth. Right, that was wrong, and that information, got spread around. But by the time the rioting started, that had been debunked, and the identity of the guy was out there.
But not on the first. The first riot started the day after, Malachy, before the guy was even identified.
The riots would have happened regardless of whether it was a white Englishman who stabbed those kids. There is a total breakdown in the civil order in Britain and in this country. There is actually no law and order. Look at what we have today. McEntee, the most useless, incompetent minister for justice that we have ever had.
To be fair,
look what she done today. Look what she done. Let me just say what she done today, and the total PR stunt. We're bringing in legislation so that judges can say, well, we want Johnny to serve a minimum term, right?
Yeah.
But the parole board can ignore that. So what is the point when judges can already do that, and the parole board already, decides what the sentence?
Okay, she said she's also she's talking to the Attorney General as well about bringing in legislation so face coverings can't be worn at protests. We talked about that in the radio last night.
From the same government who told us for 2 years you had to wear a mask to sit in your car on your own.
Okay, but Malachy, only a couple of weeks ago, you refused. No, hang on. Let me finish this. Let me finish what I want to say. You
raised a point about the balaclavas, firstly. Are we going to ban burqas? Are we going to ban all face coverings?
But Malachy, if you're going to a protest...
Can't have it both ways.
Look, okay, can I ask, if you're going to a protest with a balaclava in the middle of July... Now, if you're going in the middle of the depth of December, I kind of understand. But in the middle of July, you're going to a protest. Well, you most likely are intent on starting trouble. You know what I mean?
I have never worn a mask.
No, nor have I.
In a protest, right? And I would have no intention. I'm clearly identifiable. And if I don't want to be identified as being there, then I won't be there. But what happened to my body, my choice? What happened to people's stencil style?
It's fair to say that everybody who wears a face covering or balaclava is not a troublemaker. But it is also fair to say, on the other hand, the troublemakers tend to wear balaclavas and face coverings because they don't want to be identified. Now, okay.
Well, you see, Niall, are we now going to move to a
No, I don't want to see... I don't want to see laws. I don't want to see laws for everything. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to see in any state where we have laws for everything. But what I did see in Britain during the week, particularly, of course, was every individual that were throwing pallets through windows, or still your man that robbed all the sausage rolls from Greg's, or whatever it was, are turning cars upside down, or Muslims running around with machetes. They all wore face coverings. Malachy, only 2 weeks ago. Hang on. Let me finish what I'm saying. Hang on. Let me finish what I'm saying. Only 2 weeks ago, Malachy, you refused to condemn the violence at the Coolock protests, right? But now you're saying to me it's recreational protesters causing the problems. So which is it?
That's not what I said. No, what I said was I would neither condemn nor condone.
No, you didn't, Malachy. You wouldn't condemn it.
Yes, I did, actually, because I always say that. And what I actually said to you, Niall, was that 40 years of condemnation of rioting and of violence in this country got us nowhere. And I would neither condemn nor condone what happened. I am opposed to it. I am, and people like me are working in the background continually to try and ensure that those things don't happen.
Okay, so you do condemn recreational youngsters or recreational protesters turning cars upside down and setting fire to places. You do condemn that, don't you?
People like me, Niall, who are leading, seem to be in the leadership of this movement that's emerging, are on a daily basis trying to politicise young people.
And I get that.
They don't go down. So me coming on and condemning them doesn't get me.
No. Hang on. No, nobody's asking you to condemn young people who are involved in protest. I'm not asking you to do that. Malachy, I'm just saying. It's a quite simple question. I'm not asking you to condemn young people who get involved in protests. I'm asking you to condemn individuals, both here in the UK or here in Ireland or Northern Ireland for that matter, who get involved in violence, who get involved in throwing Molotov cocktails, who get involved in turning Garda cars upside down or police cars upside down, who get involved in running around with machetes in their hands as they did in England. I'm asking you to condemn that.
No. Since November 2022,
the answer is no. So
figures over let me make the point. Over 200 protests.
Jesus, Malachy, they only voted for you a few weeks ago, and you're already a politician. You won't even answer a question.
I've always, my position, Niall, right going back for 40 and almost 50 years, has always been the same, that I want to bring an end to violence. I don't want violence at any protests, right?
Well, then just condemn
nor
it.
do I want violence, nor do I want young people being provoked by the riot squad.
Yeah, but if,
this is not just...
and by the way, I condemn policing, that type of policing, and I have on the show condemned that type of policing. I'm quite happy to do that. But I'll equally condemn those involved in violence.
If the state puts a militarised police force onto a street in a working class area at a time of tension, there's only one outcome. And the state has done that publicly, purposely, in order to create the violence, as Keir Starmer has done. If you look at what they're talking about, two-tier policing in Britain, it is incredible that is so publicly acceptable by the political class that people, and you reference people wandering around with machetes, and being allowed to do it with no policing.
Oh, no, I agree with you. Well, the only policing they got was the police asked the group of Muslim men who were from the Muslim Defence League or something, or I don't know the name of them. Anyway, asked them to put their knives and machetes back in their cars. And now, if that had been, the English rioters, if you want to call them for a better word, or the EDL, they would have been arrested.
I think the EDL is gone.
I think they're gone. Well, the former EDL, but if you want to refer to that.
Well,
okay. But they would have been arrested for carrying weapons.
You can't now blame an organisation that doesn't exist for something. This is what the state does. This is about changing the narrative. This is why we're having hate speech laws coming in. It's not to stop the truth. It's to stop the truth getting out there, and it's to stop platforms like X allowing people to articulate what's happening.
Malachy, do me a favour. Just stay there for a second, because I want to go to Sean as well. Sean, hi, how are you?
How you doing?
Yeah, Sean, now you're from West Belfast, but you agree with the comments. You're originally from West Belfast?
I'm originally from West Belfast.
Okay, but you agree with the comments of Elon Musk. You don't think it's insightful. You agree with the comments. You believe that civil war is inevitable.
If it continues the way it is, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as I say, I grew up there, and when I was 4 years old, I was burnt out of my house, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
The person that done it, I won't mention his name, but he's dead now, and he was a top politician. He wasn't a thug, burning us out. There was 11 kids and a mother, and he led them all up, and he wasn't called a thug. He became First Minister. So, you
don't have to mention his name now. We know what you're talking about.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But, I grew up basically a second-class citizen up there, and I admit that I got into the rioting and certain things, trying to defend our people in our areas. This is what's happening here. It's nothing to do with race. If this was, you said you don't like them called illegal immigrants, or the government don't.
The government don't.
But to me, they're criminal invaders, because they're coming in here illegally, and as we all know, 99% of them are young men who could be criminals for all we know.
Could be.
So people have to protect their women and children. Simple. That's what we done. Well, I was a kid at the time, but
By the way, can I ask you, just in relation to what Malachy was saying earlier on at the start of the show, what did you think of the weekend when you saw loyalists and Republicans acting together? Did you think that was a good thing? Or Malachy says it goes completely against the whole, it goes against 30 years of history or 40 years of history.
Well, as I said, being from
history since the Battle of the Boyne, or
no, being from there, it was a good thing. But the attacking businesses and stuff like that was wrong. I would condemn that, because the majority, I'd say them, those people are legal citizens of the North and been there for many years. They're not the problem. The unvetted ones are the problem. And the government don't seem to care, either up there or down here or in England, about the unvetted, which is a problem everyone has, not just the so-called far right. And if that's being far right, I'm as far right as you can go.
And do you think that, when you look at Keir Starmer and Simon Harris, I'm just waiting for Michelle to say something about it as well, but do you think that, online it's a double-edged sword, isn't it really? X, Twitter, whatever word you want to use for it. In other words, that, there's some good stuff on there which keeps people informed that they might not know about. For example, Malachy can organise his protests and put out stuff on, use it as a platform to organise legitimate protest. But there's also the bad stuff too, which is misinformation.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that Twitter in particular, because we seem to always refer to Twitter, is it dangerous?
Well, can I ask you a question? Is entering Ireland illegally a crime?
Well, it is if you enter illegally, yes, without identification. Of course, under the statute book, Section 31, it is a crime. I think it's Section 31.
O'Gorman inviting people through X to come to this country illegally.
Well, he didn't ask people to come here illegally. He said asylum seekers were welcome to come here. Yeah, people seeking asylum.
He said, "Come here, and in 6 months I'll give you your own."
Haldor for Turkey. Yeah.
So, I mean, they're criticising Elon Musk for his opinion. Well, the government go on, and there's a lot of misinformation from them on X. So, if people think that, people that have bad opinions or so-called wrong opinions should be put off. You know what to say about what's good for the goose concerning politicians and the government? Because they put up misinformation.
Well, I suppose the best example of that would be the referendum we had recently. If it wasn't for Twitter or X, we wouldn't have heard all of the no argument. Of course, it was exposed yesterday by Grip Media that the government had been warned a year before the referendum that the majority of people who put in public submissions weren't in favour of the referendum at all. So they knew from the very start it was going to be a no vote.
Not just the majority, Niall. There was, I think, only 2 submissions put into them from individuals or groupings which were in favour of it. Any of the other ones then that were in favour of it came from funded NGOs. And that should be a national scandal. And it took grit to actually publish this yesterday. But across the broadcast media, not one mention of that. Not alone that, but the delay and the breach of the Freedom of Information legislation, their own legislation.
And look, and to be fair, we wouldn't know about it if it wasn't for X, because obviously Grip Media, like us and like many others, the only way they get the information out there is by through X.
They don't want us to know.
Stay there for a second, Sean and Malachy. I want to go, Jason, be with you in a second. Let me go to Stephen as well. Stephen, hi, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. There's a few arguments going on here. Obviously, one about the flags in Northern Ireland, X, double-edged sword, and also then I happened to mention a few minutes ago, but the minister wants to bring in legislation to stop people wearing masks at protest. That was the one you kind of took issue with, yeah?
Malachy had said that he wouldn't wear a mask at a protest, and my basic point on that is that of course he wouldn't, because it wouldn't serve your interests to not be seen or identifiable at a protest, which is fine because it's in your right to do and it works in your favour. But masks at protests in general, regardless of whose protest isn't a good idea, in my opinion. You have no good reason for hiding your face. Now, what I would kind of put as an example on the other side of protests is, for example, some people that would attend the likes of trans and intersex pride or
Gaza
pro-immigration rallies, Gaza protests and things like that, whereby, some people are wearing like masks, medical masks and things like that out of, concern for their own physical health and safety. And then, yes, in some points, people are wearing masks to protect their identity, to protect them from retribution, but also from, attack on their public image.
Could that now equally be said at one of Malachy's protests? If I wanted to attend it, for example, because I work in media, I'm not allowed to attend a protest, technically under the guidelines of the Broadcasting Authority, i.e. Commission of Man. So if I went to one of Malachy's protests and I really felt strongly about it, I'd probably have to wear a mask because I wouldn't want to be identified. Is that not fair that I should be able to do that then?
Well, I don't think it should be fair that you shouldn't be allowed to attend an event just because you're a member of the media. it doesn't matter whether you shouldn't be allowed to wear a mask in the same way that I shouldn't be allowed to wear a mask. But just because you're a member of the media shouldn't preclude you from going there. I mean, just go in a professional capacity.
Oh, I can go in a professional capacity, but I can't go and support a protest. I can't go and be front to centre with Malachy with a flag in my hand.
Yeah, well, there you go. You also don't need to be standing hand in hand to be espousing Malachy's beliefs and ideologies and opinions and agreeing with them. Because you're doing it on your podcast, on your radio station every other day of the week anyway. Okay, but Elon Musk's remarks that, civil war is inevitable, Keir Starmer and Simon Harris seem to have taken an aim at Twitter in particular. Twitter is without a doubt the biggest platform when it comes to opinion. Because everybody has an opinion on Twitter. Some of it's wrong, some of it's right, some of it's misinformed, some of it's well informed. So, realistically, it's a double-edged sword. Do you agree with their condemnation of Elon Musk, firstly? I think the likes of comments by the likes of Elon Musk and Malachy and other people on every side of the political spectrum can and rightly be called incendiary. There is only really one side of a discussion in terms of Israel, Gaza, immigration, non-immigration, and everything else. That is
when you say incendiary
and revolution.
When you say incendiary, give me an example of something that Malachy Steenson, and maybe you haven't got an example, has said that has been incendiary.
Because there are no examples.
That's incendiary.
I'm fairly sure there was some. Now I will paraphrase slightly, but I'm fairly sure you're on national media on the show that followed you during the local election, saying that there is a revolution coming.
Yeah, what's incendiary about that? It's just commentary. It's just opinion, isn't it?
It is an opinion, but I would consider it an incendiary opinion because that implies that you're going to tear down the entire fabric of society and rebuild it the way you want it.
How does it mean that? How does it mean that?
I just described it. That's what it could be interpreted as.
Hold on. Well, that's the way you're interpreting it, but that's not the way it was.
Well, that's what revolution means.
Okay, just for those who don't know what Stephen is talking about, when Malachy was elected on RTE News, he was asked by RTE News, did he have any comment? To which he replied, Malachy, and I won't quote you can quote yourself, to which he replied,
the revolution has begun. And clearly we were after taking part in a democratic revolution, in an election. If we were talking about any other kind of a revolution, we wouldn't have been standing for election. And it was clear from that election, let me finish the point, through the European votes right around this country, where a huge percentage, I think on average, the total poll across the country for people, let's say on my side of the fence, was over 20%, and the same in the locals. We've had a number of councillors elected around the country. And, that's a revolution in terms of where we were before the election. We had the purple or whatever colour it was revolution halfway across the world, which everybody thought was great. It's funny, democratic revolutions and regime change everywhere else seems to be okay, but not in this country.
Based on, I would say that revolution and political change is, yes, a good thing, except for the fact when it pivots against the...
So you don't agree with the change?
The general... I don't agree with the change because it's not the way I personally would like to see the country go, and it's not the way I voted. I don't want to see a country of mass division, mistrust and fear.
Well, we already have
based on somebody's skin colour or religion. And we already have it. And, with all due respect, people like yourself are responsible for it.
Right. Hold on. I am an equal opportunity opponent to inward migration. I don't care what colour somebody's skin is or what religion they are. The simple fact is we don't have the capacity to absorb the numbers that are coming into this country. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. And that's a simple fact.
To be fair, Stephen, I have never, in all the years I've known Malachy, and I know him a long, long time, on a personal level and also on a professional level, from coming on radio and also coming on the podcast, I have never heard him mention skin colour. Never.
Well, I'm just tying it all together because basically a lot of them seem to be inescapable of each other.
There are people online who I've seen protest with Malachy, I'm not going to start naming names, who I believe are racists. You know what I mean? But that Malachy certainly, as far as I'm concerned, is not a racist, nor are many of the people who protest with him.
We had 10,000 people on the last protest, Niall, in May. I can't
and
be
plenty of them
responsible
are
for
calling for
the
people
views
to
of every
burn the
one of
buildings
those.
with people in it.
Yeah, but see,
buildings. The only people that have been arrested in this country are questioned and had their houses raided in relation to burning of buildings have been 2 Fianna Fáil councillors in Galway. People who are on your side of the fence, apparently, in that they're members.
They're not
of
on my side of the fence.
They support open borders, and they're members of a political party who is up to its neck in increasing the population in this country through bogus asylum seekers and anybody else they can find around the world to drag in.
Okay, well, hang on, both of you. Let me just go to Jason. He's been waiting ages. Jason, hi. How are you? Stay there, Stephen. Go ahead, Jason. Go ahead. What do you want to say?
I'd be all in favour of keeping your covering if you're going out protesting because, as you've just proved there, if you don't go along with the left, they'll close you down, they'll cancel you. I mean, so why shouldn't I be allowed covering my face?
Okay.
I don't agree with everything, but I mean, why should I lose my job? I mean, what's happening now is, Niall, lads, people are losing their jobs. If they don't go along with the populists and they're caught out with any of these protests now, the left are coming at them and they want them cancelled. If you say the wrong thing, if you upset their feelings, this new big thing, not facts. Who cares about facts? Why let facts get in the way when feelings are there, Niall?
Social media,
on the right, but anyway, go on.
Yeah, social media has come under fire, Jason, obviously because of what Elon Musk said about civil war is inevitable. And you've got Keir Starmer and Simon Harris now saying that people will be responsible for what they say online. We're now seeing in Britain over the last 2 days, the last 24 hours, lots of people being arrested for things they've said online. Do you believe, online should be like free reign? You should be able to say what you want?
I think people are mad if they put anything on Facebook anymore. I mean, if that's the way it is now, we can't have a talk, we can't hold our opinions now. So we're going to be locked up if we take to the streets, we're going to be locked up if we protest by keyboards. But it's all right for the keyboard warriors to get you cancelled. They're all for that. But they're not all for free speech. They want free speech as long as what they want to hear. I mean, the government are doing a classic, let's divide. I mean, look at the two-tier policing that's going on already. We take to the streets, we're batting charged off. Minorities take to the streets, we'll speak to community leaders and we'll talk to them about how they feel we should police them. Could you imagine them coming into Ballyfermot on a Friday night when all the youths are running amok and saying, okay, we're going to go to the community leaders and ask how we should police these uncontrollable youths? No, they wouldn't. They'd send in the papers, they'd send in the media with, yous are all scum, your family are scum, none of yous work, yous are all on coke. But yet all the people that were in court for the Coolock riots were working people. They put their names and addresses in the paper. Why? To get them sacked from their jobs. So there you go, it's a class thing. It's not a religious thing, it's a class thing. I've told you, Noel, it's a race to the bottom because they're not going for politicians' jobs, they're coming for my job. They're coming for jobs that you don't need to be an Einstein. But then we've a gobshite running the country who never even finished school.
It's a fair point, Stephen. We're not. There is classism going on here. There's serious classism going on both in Britain and Ireland. I mean, there are always going to be individuals who are involved in violence. Now, you don't have to give them a reason. Any small reason is enough for them to run out and turn a car upside down and set fire to a shop or something. But generally speaking, this is about classism. It's about those horrible people in Coolock, those horrible people in Dundrum and Tipperary, those horrible people in Newtown Mount Kennedy, those lowlifes, those they're not working, they're unemployed, and which they're not, by the way. That's not the case at all. But it's a kind of classism thing. They're just members of the far right. That's what we're told.
We've said it several times that trying to use far right, far left, or working class, or thugs, or anything like that is just a stupidly lazy way to try and get your argument across without actually dissecting the problem.
One of the biggest scumbags on Twitter at the moment. I'm not going to start naming names, right? But one of the biggest scumbags on Twitter at the moment is a lefty, and somebody who is allegedly trusted by the media.
Fine, we can talk about him another time.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're equally as divisive. Oh
yeah, absolutely. Because me just shouting down at Malachy or somebody like that and calling him any name I can think of is not me winning an argument. It is me showing how fucking stupid I am. When you actually have to boil into the sociological problems that have been going on in this country for 30 years. And the way places like Coolock and Darndale and other working class areas have been neglected. That being said, there are great community resources and community youth projects and things like that. And, local enterprise offices and everything else in that vicinity that are doing amazing work. And I'm getting zero fucking thanks for it at the end of the day, either from the people that are helping or the government that are trying to fund it.
Mm-hmm. So where do we go from here? Because to me, it looks like there's a concerted effort by Britain, by Ireland, by Europe with the European Digital Treaty. And now, of course, you've got what you call politicians and senators in the United States having to go at Elon Musk too, saying they want to bring in federal law and executive orders to stop Twitter. There's a concerted effort to close down social media, to close down commentary, to close down discourse and close down robust debate.
No, that's because...
I don't think that's... Go on.
Go on, Jason.
That's because, Niall, I mean, I was always in the papers. I think my family come from a paper ground. We were always involved in them. But the way they've turned lately, I mean, at least on Twitter, you're getting to see live videos. You're getting to see what people are actually thinking and saying, and for real. And then you go onto the paper, and it's like, that's not what I just watched last night on Twitter or on the news. I mean, the narrative is totally, it's this way or you're against society and you have to be cancelled.
I mean, that's it. Okay, let me come back to Stephen on that. Stephen, that's a really good point. For example, if I was to read the media, generally speaking, right, be it Sky News, RTE, BBC, I would be of the belief that the only people that were running around Britain rioting were, indigenous English people. That wasn't the case. There was mobs of Muslims running around shouting Allah Akbar with machetes in their hands. And by the way, the police doing very little about it. I wasn't shown that on BBC News. I wasn't shown that on RTE News. You know what I mean?
No, well, every media outlet has a narrative that it plays off of, whether it's Fox News or RTE or BBC.
But RTE shouldn't have a narrative.
Even yourself.
But hold on. But this is a private podcast. RTE shouldn't have a narrative. It's a national broadcaster. We're paid for by taxpayers.
They absolutely should be able to cover everything that is going on in as impartial a way as is possible. So I don't spend my life contrary to some people's beliefs. Following news, politics, and everything else 24 hours a day. I actually have a second life and things I have to be doing. But the right are just as quick and easy to try and shut down and cancel somebody that's arguing against them, and actually trying to use factual logic to explain, well, actually, no, that's not what's happening. Because, again, it doesn't suit their narrative. So this is just the tit for tat that goes on, and it is...
Well, no, the point I was making is that's why I believe social media is important.
Like that.
Because people can make their own minds up. Stephen and Malachy stayed me because Sarah's not happy with Malachy for some reason. Sarah, hi, how are you?
I'm grand, Niall. How's it going? How's the old bones and hips and legs?
You don't even want to talk to me. But, Sarah, you're furious at Malachy. Why?
Because I've seen a video there a while ago, himself and Gavin, right? You were there and you were saying, we're here to de-escalate, okay? And all right, fair enough. But then you had two guys to the left of them throwing stones at them. And, I strongly believe, lead by example. Why did not one of them turn around and say to the lads, here, leave it out? Because the likes of that behaviour will only trigger and aggravate them more. And that's where I'm coming from with that. I know you are talking there about class. I know exactly, I come from Ballymun, I know the way it goes. I remember back in the 80s, they did exactly the same thing, marching at people's doors, trying to get people out in regards that sold drugs or took drugs, rather than help them. They wanted them out of the area. And, looking at the protest in Coolock and seeing all the behaviour of the young teens going around doing what they're doing, why is there somebody not there saying, listen, lads, leave it out, or... I don't know. Somebody have a chat with them. As you say, there's enough youth community groups around the areas.
Okay, let Malachy respond to that. Malachy, in that video where yourself and Gavin are asking to de-escalate the situation, I don't remember that part of the video, but Sarah's saying, while you're saying that, there's lads beside you in the protest throwing stuff at the guards. Would you not have focused on trying to get them to stop as well?
Well, firstly, there was myself, Gavin Pepper, Glenn Moore and Paddy Quinlan, 4 elected Dublin councillors representing the 3 councils in this city, who went up to the police lines with our arms outstretched with a number of other people to try and de-escalate it, to stop what was happening behind us, which was youngsters throwing stones. And we put ourselves at huge risk in doing that. And the response of the state And the caller asked, why didn't we stop
pepper
those
spray
youngsters? The response of the government was to pepper spray us straight in the face. Right? Exactly what the RUC would do. Right?
Yeah, but Malachy, you can't justify that.
Hold on. What we were trying to do was to de-escalate it. Do you know what that means?
I do know what 100% what a de-escalate means.
If the police had have discussed it with us and de-escalated, we
Malachy, what you do, right? See the way you say de-escalate a situation. You have to observe a force before you de-escalate, right? And to me,
you observing it.
If you were observing it, you should easily know those lads were there to make trouble, or to aggravate, or to provoke. That's where I'm coming from with that.
Hold on. Let's start at the beginning of that evening. There was a protest called for 6 o'clock where there were going to be speeches and to pull back from the violence that had happened earlier in the day. The response of the state to that was to put the public order on the streets when there was no need for it, and to refuse to allow the speeches to take place, which could have calmed the situation. Now, maybe it wouldn't have, but what we do know is that on the Friday night, then after that, when we had a protest and we had almost 2,000 people there was no violence until, the public order was put back out, unit was put back out, outside Crown Paints when a number of people had gone back up there.
But how are that? But how, Malachy? Sorry for interrupting. But how are those young people who are behind you throwing stones, right? How are they supposed to know what they're doing is wrong and you don't agree with it when you yourself publicly won't condemn it?
Niall,
could be fair, Malachy.
At any protest, Niall, that I have been at, and it's people like me who have put our necks on the line in a physical way. And in a very real dangerous situation to try. Remember, we weren't wearing protective armour. We weren't wearing helmets. We could have just as easily been hit from behind.
But you're missing the point. I support your protest, Malachy.
Hold on.
I support the people of Coolock. But I'm saying but you also need to take leadership if you want things to be controlled and condemn what young people are doing.
There has to be responsibility there. I feel.
This is what the media had done for 40 years in the conflict in the north, was get people on and try and get them to follow the state narrative and start condemning things.
I'm not asking to condemn things.
But what I'm doing in the real world is actually trying to ensure that those things don't happen. What's happened has already happened.
They are going to continue happening. But they are going to continue happening.
We have had, and there has been over 250 marches since November 2022. And there hasn't been trouble at 99% of them. Any trouble that has been at any of them, right, was created by people driving from the left, driving cars into protests, by the police attempting to ram our protest through a counter-protest. And thankfully, our stewards, again, put their lives on the line.
But Malachy, I'm trying to be fair. You're quick to condemn the police, by the way, when they do something wrong. And I'll condemn the police. I'm quite happily condemn the police when they guard Síochána when they do something wrong, or I believe they inflame a situation. And they did. And they have on numerous occasions. But, you have to be fair, Malachy. And, when you see something, to be fair to all sides and to make things balanced to some degree and to get things to progress a step further, we must condemn what's wrong as well. You know what I mean?
I
don't have to be fair, and I don't have to just take one side.
But you do, Malachy. You're a councillor, and you have to be responsible, and you have to take accountability. Like, if you're looking for fairness, you have to give some type of guidance.
So here I am, Malachy. I'm telling you, I support the people of Coolock. I support the people of Newtown Mount Kennedy. I support the people of Dundrum and Tipperary currently at the moment. I support all of those people. I agree with them that there's been no government consultation. I agree the government are using bully boy tactics. I agree the ministers are being aggressive in their tone and they're ignoring the people and not listening. I'm on your side. But I will turn around and say, but that doesn't give anybody an excuse to turn, a car upside down and set fire to it or put windows in. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's easy to do that.
My position is, you want me to use a specific formula of words.
I don't know.
My position has been quite clear. I am opposed to violence on any protests.
Okay.
And I have done my
damnedest. Whenever something happens after an event that you've organised, you should come out and condemn it.
Hold on. in Ballymun.
If something happens after a protest that you organise, or that happens after a protest that you organise, you're responsible to condemn it.
Hold on. I didn't organise a protest in Coolock.
I didn't say you did. I'm just saying in general.
2023, when it looked like it was going to kick off, again, it was people like me who stood between the police and young lads. Remember, these young lads hate the police. And regardless of what the issue is, many of these young lads will look for an opportunity to attack the police. And that's the way it is right around the world.
Yeah, it's a history, unfortunately, of people that are feeling neglected by the state.
Hold on, you see, look, and I'm not going to take lectures from people who, for instance, trap ministers in cars and then complain about other people, having protests.
I wonder who.
I wonder a minister in a car.
No, not you. He's not talking about you. I know.
I'm not saying you.
He's talking about Paul Murphy.
The left.
Yeah, Paul Murphy. He's referring to. Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to name anybody because he was found not guilty.
Yeah, well, he was found not guilty. He went to court and he was found not guilty.
People know what happened. And, it seems to me that these people have no difficulty in using violence when it suits them. And I am opposed. We have built this movement now. You think that if we wanted a violent movement and if we wanted anarchy on the streets, that we couldn't have just, on day one, done that, particularly in the inner city. After 3 children were stabbed, do you think that if we wanted a violent unrest and anarchy, that we couldn't have just done it? We have built this movement as a peaceful grassroots movement, and violence is counterproductive to our objective, which is to build a mass movement, which is what we're doing. And those who are engaged in violence, I'd say this to them directly. I don't need to go on the radio to say it to them and people who are involved. And we, at every protest that there has been violence, and even protests where there was the potential for violence, we have used our stewards in a very clear way, and I have said it very clearly to people that there is to be no violence and people are not to be engaged in that. And if they want to do that, well, then they can go somewhere else.
Stay there. Well, hang on. Stay there for a second, because I just want to bring John in if I can. John, hi. How are you?
Yeah, look, we spent nearly 15 minutes now going around in circles.
Yeah, get back to Elon Musk, will you? Because that's where the conversation started, by the way. And Twitter and Simon Harris and Keir Starmer, of course, condemning his comments, in relation to civil war. Do you believe they're insightful comments?
It goes without saying that anyone involved in throwing stones and any violent behaviour should be condemned straight away. Violence should be condemned on all sides, and that includes the public order, who have a mandate from the government to go and batter Irish people off the streets. Now, as regards getting back to Elon Musk, no, he's quite right. He's entitled to make the comment he did because it's his opinion. And as an individual, he's giving his opinion, right? Now, only for the likes of X, nobody would know what the hell is going on. Do we want to go back to the days where the only outlet you had, we say here in Cork, was writing a stiff letter to the editor, giving out about the government, will say, and more than likely, the editor was aligned to one of the major political parties, and they would pick and choose what letter they would publish, and if it was very critical, it would end up in the waste paper basket, right? Now, also the monitoring what's going on now, I don't like either, because during the water campaign, a lot of people actually don't know this. They set up Noreen O'Sullivan, the former commissioner, right? Her husband was a superintendent, and he was given the job of setting up Operation Mizzen, and it was to monitor social media, to watch the people involved, especially the leaders, in the water campaign. So a lot of people don't know that, right? And this is why it pisses off Simon Harris and Micheál Martin. They want to control completely. This never happened before. The people had an outlet, and your podcast is brilliant as well. And they're like a grip, that it's the only outlet that people have to engage with each other, to mobilise, to organise, right, which they couldn't do before. And the government don't want that. And they will do anything they can to break it up and to stop it.
I mean, it's a fair point, Stephen. This is a big worry around the world. And I know there was a statement put out by the head of Rumble and also the head of Truth Social. They're now setting up their own networks, which will be independent of Google and Amazon, because in case people don't know, Twitter, Facebook, everybody all use Amazon servers and Google servers, right? So in other words, that's controllable. In other words, tomorrow, if there was a concerted effort by, the European Union and by the American government, they could take down those servers and stop social media. So now what they're doing is they're offering other platforms now the opportunity to use their independent servers, which can't be taken down by government, because there's a fear in the next 6 to 7 months that governments of the world, both Ireland, England, UK, Europe and America, will have some sort of power to remove and to stop social media. I mean, that would be devastating, Stephen, if that happened.
I agree. I agree. People should be able to, Gript and people like that should be, and yourselves and everyone else should be able to do their own research and put the effort in and put out factual content as far as they interpret it to be factual, But then at the same point, I'm allowed to come on and go, well, actually, no, that's not really accurate, and you're not quite giving the full truth, because there's always a truth in the middle that everyone pulls and stretches to their own uses and devices, and then there are plain out lies. Like anything that is said online or anything that is said in a WhatsApp group or something like that is only verifiable if somebody bothers to go and try and verify it. I got a text message from a friend of mine saying that they were moving the Garda Síochána, the prison service, were moving a known paedophile into the area, and he left it at that. So I went and hounded him to give me the name of the alleged paedophile, and I went and Googled it, and he was released 4 years ago. But somebody told him that, and he didn't question it. He just passed it on.
Yeah, and I see that regularly.
Easily created massive problems.
Yeah, no, I seen a video this morning, for example, that somebody put up of, here's somebody being arrested for a comment they put up on Twitter, and there's a video of the police going and arresting this guy. I see that video. Yeah. I saw that video 3 years ago. That video is about 3 years old. So what I'm saying is, I have no doubt that misinformation is put online, probably sometimes with the best intention, but it has bad thing. But the point is, for all the bad stuff that's up there, there's a lot of stuff that's good. And and I mentioned earlier on, for example, and I'll be talking to Ben Scallon about it tomorrow on the show. Grip Media put an article up yesterday for information they got on the Freedom of Information, which took them a long time to get, in relation to the referendum, which should have never happened in the first place. A waste of 30 million of taxpayers' money, or more possibly, because public submission said, we don't want this referendum, apart from 2 NGOs or something like that. So that information would have never got into the public domain if it wasn't for Grip Media. And the only way that Grip Media, and the main way they get their information out, the main way I get my information out, is through X.
It's freedom of information, and getting the information out in terms of social media. Yeah, that's good, and people should be digging into these things. I'm fairly sure I heard a lot of people on the anti-referendum side of it saying exactly the same thing. They just weren't able or hadn't the evidence to publish at the time.
Right.
But
hang on.
So my basic point of it is that the stuff that goes online is the same as the stuff that's, I write in the newspaper or you write in the newspaper, unless you can verify it, unless you can stand over it, and unless you're held responsible and hold yourself responsible for what you're putting out into the world, then there's problems. Because
but there's big problems coming down the line, because Commissioner Mann now is also involved in overreach as well, the Broadcasting Authority of Commissioner Mann, and in their latest publication, Commissioner Mann says training on-air presenters and hosts to deal with hateful or denigrating speech or of guests or program participants, including on-call-in shows. In other words, shows like this, right, or the one I do on the radio, right?
The one you do on the radio.
Yeah, in other words, that I should.
Which is upholding the broadcasting standards. You are required to verify and force people.
But here's the thing: unlike the hate speech laws, who decides what's hateful? Who decides?
Exactly. Yeah.
Who decides?
You decide, or the person.
Let me give you an example.
That's how it works.
Yeah, but hang on. A caller comes onto my radio show at night and turns around and says, "No, I've real concerns about the amount of Muslims in Ireland, because their culture doesn't fit in well with ours."
And the amount of unvetted males.
No. Forget about the unvetted males bit, right? I have a concern about their culture. I do believe their culture doesn't fit in well with ours. Some of them, and I don't believe it fits in well. Now, am I supposed to take that caller immediately off the air because I consider that maybe to be hateful, or am I to leave the caller on the air and say, "Well, that's the caller's opinion"?
The way you read the Commissioner Mann piece doesn't require you to take somebody off the air. It requires you to question them.
Okay,
and provide a counter narrative.
I just believe that it's overreach now at this stage. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just pass a comment as well as a gal that came into the conversation today about wearing balaclavas, right? Now, you know that I've been outside the likes of Micheál Martin's home over the years, right? I never covered my face, and when I faced down Leo Varadkar when he came to Cork, I never wore a balaclava. And when the guards come up to me and they ask me my name, I say, my name is John O'Donovan, right? I give my full name, I don't wear a balaclava, and I totally condemn anyone that wears a balaclava, because it's impinging on the likes of me then, right, who will not wear a balaclava, because I'm not a scumbag, I'm not a hooligan, I'm not a terrorist, right? And all you're doing, these clowns out there that are wearing balaclavas, it's impinging back on the likes of me, another decent, whether it's pro-life or whether it is anti-migration, whatever, it's impinging on us then that we're all the scumbags then, because there's some individuals wearing balaclavas. If you wear a balaclava, you're hiding your face. You have no place on the protest.
Okay, thank you for that, John. I appreciate you coming on. Stay there, Stephen, if you can. Let me go to Connie. Connie, hi, how are you?
Fine, Niall, how are you?
Good. Connie, we've talked about a million things today, but I want to focus very much on, I suppose, social media, if I can, and this argument between the British government and Elon Musk currently at the moment, where, you know, Elon Musk said civil war is inevitable. Do you think that's inciting people?
No, I don't think so, Niall. Maybe he's speaking, maybe it's a bit of the truth there. Like, how else is it going to end, you know? What is? I believe that a lot of it is just programmed anyway. It's all part of their plan.
Whose plan? Oh, you can say what you want on the air, but whose plan?
Oh, yes. Okay, I'll say exactly so. The big boys that think the WEF, they're all, Keith Stammer and Simon Harris, they're all part of the same plan, the WEF. I'm going to call them puppets because that's what they are. And I don't know, you know, for that reason, like, should there, I believe that there's a bigger plan. You know, it suits them very well to have complete disorder in England. I was away for the weekend, actually, so I didn't see a lot of it. But I do.
When you say it suits them, I believe sometimes division in society sometimes suits politicians to some degree, because it shows people up for what they are sometimes. But
exactly.
here's the thing: I don't believe for a minute that, you know, some Keir Starmer or Simon Harris, for that matter, you know, would be happy to see people running around the street setting fire to things and turning over, you know, buildings and whatever. I don't know. I don't think
that's not right. I'm not saying that's right. But I'm just saying, what I'm saying is, this is part of the greater plan, and people need to use their discernment, and they need to just calm down and say, you know, it's not right. I didn't feel like Niall. I was away, and I didn't pay any heed to it, to be honest. It is bad. And, well, you know, another thing I want to say there, because I heard the other caller, okay, you can't call them all scumbags. Maybe they're wearing balaclavas because of facial recognition, you know? I mean, it's the other thing, you know? Now, first of all, I think the whole thing from the beginning in Southport was almost an incitement to violence, so they can bring in whatever they want. And we know it's hate speech laws, and we know that it's going to be probably down the road martial law. That's what's coming in.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm looking at the bigger plan, and you want to ask me, I don't know. I mean, you can say anything on social media, like they're taking that out of context, if you ask me. You know?
Yeah. So you think that was just his opinion and he's quite entitled to that?
Well, you know, and we're not having an opinion anymore. Is this where it's going? You know, this is quite worrying, actually, you know?
Yeah. Okay. And by the way, generally speaking, do you believe that X, we're talking about X primarily, or Twitter as people call it, do you believe it's a good thing or a bad thing?
X? Or the whole social media?
Well, X in general. I suppose X would be the one that people tend to focus on.
I'm really bad news for you. I'm not honest, but...
oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Well, I think all social media is quite toxic, really. You have to take your own discernment out of it. Like, surely the God, people have enough common sense. Is common sense go out of fashion altogether?
Okay.
You know?
Okay, thank you. Okay, good point, Connie. Thank you for that. Let me go to Linda as well. Linda, hi, how are you?
Hi, Niall. Listen, I just actually wanted to comment on Sarah and Stephen's point about Malachy not, you know, his actions not de-escalating the Coolock riots. I've been at many protests that was organised by Malachy. I don't know him personally. And I attended one in particular where he had quickly gathered together stewards, volunteers, to walk along the one in O'Connell Street that we were all sort of corralled down towards the GPO.
Towards the counter-protest, yeah.
Yeah, where Antifa were waiting, you know, and the guards wouldn't let us take a left onto Marlborough Street so we could avoid them. And those stewards that day prevented any kind of conflict. And that was organised by, again, I don't know Malachy Steenson personally. I just attended a lot of protests over the years. And from what I can also add is, as regards to masks, I also remember the controversy during COVID when those of us who were attending marches against the draconian measures were told that we were spreading disease by not wearing masks.
Yeah, I know. There's a bit of a contradiction going on there. Yeah, I understand with masks. Okay, wait. No. Let me focus on your first point. Let me get back to Stephen. Stephen, you're still there. That's a fair point. You know, I mean, Malachy, I know he's been responsible for a lot of the protests. He's organised a lot of the protests, but he has put a bit of work into it too, you know, and on numerous occasions I've seen what Linda is referring to, where Malachy will be organising and making sure, you know, there's no confrontation by organising stewards or the direction of flow of the protest or whatever. He doesn't have to do. He doesn't get paid to do it.
No, and, you know, he should obviously be doing everything he possibly can to keep the people that are attending the protest that he organised safe, and anybody else that is watching it. You know,
yeah, he can't be. No, he can't be responsible for everything.
Can I just jump in?
He can't be responsible for everything, but I'm still speaking. Thank you. No, I'm still speaking. Thank you.
Stephen,
so he can't be responsible for it, and right. Go on then. Say whatever you're going to say.
My point is this. You're talking about one man here. You're assuming that one man...
I'm not talking about one man. I'm talking about the entire fucking movement.
Sorry, Stephen, can I finish, please?
You may.
I've attended the protest. I have heard his conversation and those of others speaking, not just Malachy, asking for peaceful protest. I've heard it personally for a number of years. So... Sarah was judging some clip where the escalation had, I wasn't in attendance, but the escalation had already happened at the hands of the public order unit.
Well, I was just about to say that
okay, well, hang on, Linda. Let Stephen respond to what you've just said.
Necessarily cause escalation. I'm also not going to say that the people that attend protests in general are going there to cause a problem. There are people that go to it, and there are people that go to it afterwards, and there are people that jump on the bandwagon to cause and incite problems that necessitate the deployment of the public order unit. But the guards are going to get crucified for what they do, regardless of whether they, you know, mace a load of people or if they just stand there watching people burn a bus. You know, regardless of how they police a protest, they're going to get criticised for it. Their job is to try and maintain that. Their job is to.
But there is an argument, Stephen, sometimes that the public order unit are called in before the first stone is even thrown. You know, in other words, that in itself can be quite insightful. When you have a protest which is reasonably peaceful, you're always going to have a few messers, but reasonably peaceful and being looked after by, you know, Standard Guard of Síochána over there, and then all of a sudden you have, you know, 200 or 300 people arrive, or guards arrive, you know, with face coverings, or mace gas and shields. You know, that in itself is enough sometimes to incite people.
I agree. But at the same point, a lot of the times they're deployed because there is an expectation that elements that are at a protest may start to cause a problem. And if they weren't on hand, if it took them 4 or 5 hours to get there, they'd be given out to just as much. There's
a video online going around there from the Coolock protest from about 2 weeks ago. And there's a whole line of guards, about 50 guards, across the dual carriageway or across the road. And they're doing this movement, you know, where they go 10 yards and then another 10 yards. And there's a person videoing it and they're going, lads, who are you actually fighting? There's nobody there. And your man shows with the camera up the street. There is not a single person on the street. And they're roaring and they're shouting, move on, move on. And there's nobody actually there. It's like theatre. It's ridiculous. It looks stupid. You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, I'm not an expert on how, you know, that they do these things. But there was nobody on the street. And then a car came down, who obviously lived there, was driving down, and they're banging on the window of the car, telling the car to turn around. And I'm going, could you not just let the person, it was a woman in the car, could you not just let her drive through? She wasn't doing any harm. You know, some of the policing is completely over the top, Stephen. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree. But as I said, they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. They don't know where that woman in that car is going or what her intentions are to do or anything like that. But they are also responsible for her safety. If she had driven through and if something had happened, they are responsible for it. They let her through.
Okay, just getting back to social media very quickly, Linda, do you post on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter. I'm not one for posting, but I'm one for learning. I've learned a lot about what's happening in the world through Twitter. And I think it's an insult to people's intelligence to think that, our government or the European Union or whomever is deciding what I can read on Twitter. I have enough intellect to be able to decipher fact from fiction. And this is quite clearly overreach. It's quite clearly the next step in control. And you're on your show every day. We're discussing what's happening in Ireland within the perimeters of what we're allowed to. On Twitter, people can, spread our argument wider. We can discuss the World Economic Forum. We can discuss who's pulling the strings. It's quite clearly this is not a local issue. It's quite clearly this is across the West. And if people in Ireland don't wake up to the fact of what's happening peacefully and patriotically, protect the country, there will be no country.
Okay, thank you for that, Linda. And let me go to is it Joseph or Carl? Hang on. It's Carl. I have to go to next. Carl, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Niall, how are you? Yeah, I protesting the peaceful protest. Don't turn up to a protest wearing a balaclava. If you do that, you're inciting hatred, you're inciting violence, and the public order unit are there to defend and protect every citizen in the country. But if you're going to antagonise them, they are going to use force.
Well, I think, Carl, it is enough just to tell people not to do it. I'm not too sure if I agree with bringing in a law. Bringing in laws for everything starts to piss me off a little bit. You know what I mean? I mean, just tell people they shouldn't do it. I don't think bringing in a law is a good idea. But go on anyway.
Like they've asked people. I mean, the guards have asked people not to record on their mobile phones. They've asked them, stop recording. They still do it, and all we get is one side of the story. But I think that these cameras coming out the guards are wearing is a great idea. Mm-hmm. It was end all the bullshit that's on social media. Yeah, you
can get bullshit on social media, and things can be out of context. You see a 6-minute video or 6-second video clip of a guard doing something. You want to know what happened before, and I'll give you a classic example. There was a video doing the rounds last week at Coolock where there was an insinuation that the guards themselves set fire to their own police car. And it showed a picture of a video of a guard running over and what seemed to be a bottle in his hand and throwing it at the car, and the car was going on fire. And this was, look at the guards, they're setting fire to their own car. I then subsequently found another video which was taken 10 seconds before that, and you could see the little courier setting fire to the wheel of the car. And what happened then was, from a different angle, the guard came around the corner, he had a bottle of water in his hand. The courier ran, and the guard threw the bottle of water over the wheel where he was setting fire to it to put it out. So it made it look completely different, put it into context. So what I'm saying is, it's quite easy to manipulate videos online to make them look worse or make them look like it's something it's not.
And a lot of people viewing that will not bother doing the research to find the other clips.
I would agree. And a lot of people, Stephen, did say, look at the guards setting fire to their own cars, which wasn't true at all, by the way. It didn't turn out to be true at all. But here's the thing, Carl. You heard what Linda said a few minutes ago. She's a grown adult. She can decide what's fact and what's fiction.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm the same. I put up a comment there earlier on about one of these. I'm on Twitter myself, or X, whatever you want to call it. One of the really extremists, and he's saying this and saying that. Now, it's all fiction what he's saying, I said, look, give us the facts. The fact is you're delusional. The fiction is what's coming from your house. Just talking total bullshit.
But does it concern you when you see, is there overreach when you see a government, well, two governments now, Ireland and England, and Simon Harris said it yesterday in relation to what people say online, and obviously trying to bring in hate speech laws, etc. The European Digital Treaty, they want to get tougher on that now and change some of the laws and that. You've got executive orders being made in America to silence certain people on Twitter, and including Elon Musk. Does it concern you that we could lose social? We could lose X, for example, in the next 6 months. They could take it down or try.
Well, if we lose X, so be it. You know what I mean? It would stop it will stop a lot of the nonsensical bullshit.
But what about the good stuff that comes from X? What about all the good stuff that comes? There's so much that we wouldn't know if it wasn't for X.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some people are going to lose out if X is taken down. And that's just the way it is. It's like they banned Donald Trump from bloody Facebook and Twitter because of the crap that he was putting.
Yeah, and he opened his own social media company. Yeah.
Yeah, and he found his own social media company, and he can say whatever he wants. Most of us know. I mean, okay, I know you're a Trump supporter. I mean, I don't support any of it. It doesn't really bother me. But he's a bleeding headbanger. He's away with a serious guy. That's just my opinion, which I'm entitled.
You're entitled to your opinion.
Yeah. And you're entitled to your opinion. I mean, I'm not going to put it up on social media and say Trump is a bleeding headbanger. People don't care what I think. And people think of me behind my back. That's none of my business either. So look, I think the social media side of things have to have a good look at social media to see exactly.
Does it need to be policed better? Is what you're saying?
I wouldn't say. Yeah, but not every account. There is people there that are just out there to incite hatred and violence.
Oh, there are
constantly.
I am not going to disagree with that.
Talk about.
Yeah. No, there are a couple of. I know even individuals within Ireland here, and all they put up is horrible videos of hatred all the time. Yep.
The neighbour of mine was put up on TikTok, another one of these sites, about born migrants out of tents. I was saying, here's a guy now that's being followed by everyone, but being followed by 2,000 people. And he says, let's born migrants out of tents. But little does he realise that he's being followed by the special branch, or whatever you want to call them, detectives all the time now, because he's inciting hatred. It's a head case. You don't do that.
No, of course you don't. And by the way, if somebody the thing about it is, if somebody goes on TikTok, an Irish person goes on TikTok or Twitter tomorrow and says, everybody burn migrants out of tents, right? There's already laws there to deal with that. We have the 1989 Incitement to Hatred, Incitement to Violence Act. So we've already got a law there to deal with that. So if somebody does that, they should be charged because that is incitement. Thank you for that, Carl. Let me go to Joseph as well. Joseph, hi, how are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Joseph, okay, there's a million things we talked about today, but I want to focus very much on, this comment by Elon Musk about civil war being inevitable. Do you think that's inciting? Stephen believes it is, or is that just opinion?
No, it's as much inciting as me saying it looks like rain and someone saying you're inciting the rain. What he's predicting is the continuation of the situation, which is leading to such huge anger in the population, and it is going to cause civil war. I mean, we've been down this path. Various countries historically, we've had politicians really pissed off with their government, and the government.
Your line is very windy or something, Joseph. Are you out in the wind and rain there? Sorry.
There's a little bit of wind. I'm doing everything I can to have a good signal here. It's terrible. Sorry. So look, historically, we've known that governments have tried to be authoritarian, to clamp down on dissent, try to remove people's freedoms. This is what they're doing right now, and it always ends in or
unfortunately, you're going to have to fix that, Joseph. All we can hear is the wind.
Jesus, I'll go somewhere that's not windy. Give me 2 seconds.
Okay, I'll come back. Stay there, Joseph. I will come back to you. Fix yourself, and I'll come back to you. Let me go to Tara. Tara, hi. How are you?
Hi, Niall. How are things?
Good. I'm going to come back to Joseph in a second because it's important he gets to say what he wants to say. Let him find a shelter there. Sorry, go ahead, Tara.
I think they're pointing the finger of blame at Elon because it's easier for them to blame someone of influence than to admit they're the ones who incited this violence. The government know full well they're responsible. That they know full well that it's their behaviour and their actions that have caused all of this. This has been brewing and it's going to continue until they make a change in their policies. It's not going to, by censoring Elon, it's not going to stop anything. It's just going to make people even angrier. Only for my car tax hadn't arrived, I would have driven to Belfast myself and joined in on those riots. And the government's behaviour incited me to do that. Not Elon Musk. I don't even follow Elon
You would have
Musk.
Joined in the riots?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why, but Tara, why would you join in a riot?
Because I'm furious with the way the government...
I'm furious. I'm furious too by the government policy in relation to immigration. But it doesn't mean I'm going to start throwing Molotov cocktails and turning cars upside down. Because that's what they were doing.
I wouldn't have have gone doing that, but I would have gone up and I would have been protesting.
Oh, okay. There's a difference. There's a difference in saying you join a protest and join a riot. You know what I mean?
Well, it's a riot, isn't it? Well, that's the thing as well. It sickens me to hear of the mainstream media blaming, and I quote, racist far right for the riots. Opportunistic thugs are responsible for the looting, the rioting and the violence and whatnot that went on in those riots, not the far right. The protesters are everyday men and women. They're taxpayers who are furious at the government's dirty tricks and the way they're treating the public and lying to them. The government's then incited all of this, not Elon Musk. And I think we need X now more than ever. Because if you look at the vote on the Lisbon Treaty, if that took place today, the likes of X and the free speech that we have would have ensured the second voting attempt didn't even go ahead, never mind get passed.
Yeah, you've got a good point. You made a very good point. I mean, let me bring that to Stephen. Stephen, that's a really good point. If indeed we had had social media at the time of the Lisbon Treaty, the second run, of course, because we all voted no first time around, they went off and changed a little bit of it, tweaked it up and gave it back to us again. That
brought in something like the triple lock.
Yeah, it would have never passed. I can guarantee you it would have never passed if we had had social media at the time. Just like the previous referendum, people would have mobilised on social media. Experts, by the way, including people like Michael McDowell at the time, would have mobilised on social media to get people to vote no.
Yeah, they probably would have. And there is massive concern for the legitimacy of any election because of social media, because it's not just, we're well capable as Irish people of putting our own crap and shit onto the internet and trying to convince people of this, that and the other without Russian bots or Japanese bots or Chinese bots or American hackers or whatever it is trying to influence an election somewhere in the world or spreading a lot of misinformation and disinformation. If anything else, it has made us all more necessary. It makes it all the more necessary for all of us to think critically about anything that we see, whether it's pro-Israel or anti-Israel, pro-immigration, anti-immigration. Think about anything and everything you fucking read on
but Stephen, but it was nothing to do with Russian bots or Chinese bots or any bots, by the way, when I was running for election. The people who put me down while I was running for election and spread misinformation about me were other political parties and lefties. Socialist political parties, by the way. And you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
People who disagreed with your opinion and the way the party you were aligned
to. They spread disgusting misinformation. You know what I mean?
And
out of context.
They used an awful lot of stuff that you had covered in your career in terms of topics and things like that as weapons against you.
Out of context. Completely out of context.
Completely out of context. And anyone who dared, including me, try and defend and, try and make sense of why you were covering it and why you would give this person or that person, a moment's breath, never mind a moment of airtime, get shot at.
Oh, yeah, I interviewed Tommy Robinson on 2 occasions, by the way, back in 2015, I think it was, in 2016 or 17, I can't remember. But by the way, it was a producer who organised the interview. And I would have, at the time, when he would have been involved in the EDL at the time, I would have challenged him. If you listen back to those interviews, someone can find them, I can't find them, but if you listen back to them, you will see that I would have challenged him on everything he said. So, I mean, the point is, what, are we not allowed to interview people anymore? There was a story about me interviewing a man who wanted to bring in legislation in Germany who was campaigning against the legislation that was banning sex with animals. And they brought this up during my campaign as if I was somebody who supported this notion, which wasn't true at all. So I mean, what I'm saying is, it was ridiculous.
You were doing a little bit of fucking journalism and would have rightly tried to fucking, present the argument and give him his voice, but also
but the point Tara's making is, if we didn't have social media, I wouldn't be able to defend myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm not saying we should do away with social media, and the likes of Musk and people like that can do whatever the fuck they like and set up their own data farms and centers and things like that, and host their own individual fucking internet networks if they want to in the morning. It would cost them nothing but a blink of an eye to do it. But the people, anything that is put out into the public domain is entitled to be publicly scrutinised and held to account in the law.
Tara, would you accept that?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Anything that's put out in public domain is, we're entitled to scrutinise it, and it should be, the law obviously has a responsibility to deal with things that are incorrect. In other words, that if you put up something that's insightful, that you should be going to jail for it.
Well, it's fair that, it should be subject to the law, but it needs to be balanced and it needs to be applicable to both left and right. I mean, there's a lot of things
obviously,
that the left
the law applies
with,
to
the right
everybody.
to be vilified for.
Well, you would, you would think that, Stephen, but currently at the moment it doesn't seem to apply to everybody. It only seems to apply to people on the right.
Yeah, and it's only people. So. It's people saying that because they're the ones on the receiving end of scrutiny and.
No, I've seen some horrendous posts by people on the left. For example, I'm not going to go into exactly what it was, be it LGBT issues, be it other issues or whatever, or in relation to war or Russia or whatever. I've seen some horrendous stuff posted up online, and nobody questions it because they're lefties. That's okay.
Well. There was that man, he's a black man from Dublin, who was inciting hatred towards the Irish, telling migrants to strap up and to forcefully take the Irish men's jobs, homes, and to take their women. Nothing was done about him. And that's a certain Muslim cleric who incited hatred towards the Irish when he claimed, and then later backtracked, that it was the Irish who attacked him. His story had more holes than a brothel. Are you telling me that we shouldn't be allowed to call him out on his story online? We need social media more than ever to hold people accountable.
I mean, she's got a fair point. I don't want to get into that whole story per se, but there is an individual out there who's saying horrendous things about Irish people, calling them all racist, calling for the black community to go and take their women, take their money, take their homes, and yet then cries foul of racism, telling everybody that he's a victim. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I don't know who you're talking about.
Okay, well, I don't want to get into the whole story there because there's other ramifications.
At the same point.
But the point she's making is it works both ways.
On both sides.
Yeah.
Exactly, of course.
Yeah, but we don't deal with it on both sides. We only deal, for example, in that situation, the media only went for, his side of the story, and God love poor me, I'm the victim of racism.
To have it taken down. Or go and report it to the guards.
I think people have. It has been reported to the guards by many people, and nothing has been done about it.
You obviously have to wait and see what they end up doing about it, if they end up doing anything about it at all.
Nothing. Just like Stephen, for example, the minister yesterday, or the Taoiseach yesterday, talks about, people threatening politicians. We won't put up with this. The no holes will be barred, and, dealing with those who do that kind of thing. I've had my life threatened 3 times. If you want to, I'm going to try and get permission to do it or AI it, but I can play a voice message that I received on the radio station from a man who said he's going to put a bullet in my skull. The guards know who he is, and this is over 1.5 years ago, and nothing has been done about it. Nothing.
And that's horrible. That shouldn't be the case.
Yeah. He said he's going to follow me home.
Special criminal court in the morning,
He said he's going to follow me home from the radio station. I'm watching you every night you go home. And he even says where I'm going to. And he said, you better watch your back. I'm going to put a bullet in your skull.
Jesus.
And I have that on audio, his phone number. The guards called to the radio station. They know who he is. And I've heard nothing back from the guards. Nothing. And yet Mary Lou gets a posting online from somebody who says they're going to do something to her. And I'm sorry to hear that. And that's terrible. And the person's arrested within 24 hours. There you go.
Yeah, obviously there's different pressure being applied in different ways. And, a member of the Oireachtas is obviously more important, shall we say, than somebody like your good self. At least in order to be seen to be doing something. All I can say to you is something stupid and try and follow up with it and keep the pressure on them, because it's stupid, it's wrong, it's these are the people that are, possibly nothing more than a keyboard warrior or somebody leaving an angry fucking voicemail while they jack off to it. But at the same point, a threat is a threat is a threat, and everybody should be held to account in the law.
What I'll do for people if they want to come on tomorrow, I'm going to get my producer to take the audio because there's a GDPR. I know this sounds bizarre, but there is a GDPR issue with me playing it because it came into the radio station, right? To the WhatsApp. What I'll do is I'll get him to change the audio using AI just so people can actually hear what he said. I'll get it and I'll play it tomorrow. Stay there for a second. Let me go back to Joseph. I think he's got his.
I have to go anyway.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Joseph, hi. How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, Joseph. Stay there, Tara.
Okay, that's lovely and clear. The point I was making was that basically, look, Twitter is nothing new. It's just a digital version of the pubs, cafes, and any other social space where people would gather. It used to be that, you'd get into conversation with other people around your town or village or whatever, and they might say all sorts of nonsense. They might make up lies, and it's up to you to be reasonable and say, look, that person's full of crap, because most people are. We'll say it that way. Yeah, the same thing applies to social media. So it's not, Elon Musk's fault that people say stuff on Twitter. It's everyone's fault for picking up on that and believing it 100%. So that's type of a skill that everyone should be learning from a very young age, and unfortunately you're not. We're in a generation of gullible idiots.
Well, I mean, before Elon Musk even put it up, by the way, I think I might have said it on the air, it looks very, the situation at the moment, the political temperature of both Europe and America is very dangerous at the moment, and I believed we were heading towards civil war, certainly civil disobedience. So, I mean, he's not the only one to have thought this, or if this is not some sort of euphoric moment where he's come up with something very original. But yet you see the British Prime Minister having a go at him, suggesting this is the kind of stuff on social media that shouldn't be allowed, and the very reason we need to go after Elon Musk.
Yeah, well, the type of thing that shouldn't be allowed is a police report that 3 young girls have been murdered. That's the type of stuff that everyone should be up in flames about. And that's the type of thing that has incited, I would say revolution, but serious action.
Oh, we've lost him. Whatever. Poor old Joseph on his phone. He's the most unluckiest man in the world when it comes to his phone. Sean, hi, how are you?
Niall, when the President of the United States decided to give up, he didn't post it on CNN or Fox News, he went straight to X.
Well,
Stephen Donnelly post last year and had 1,000 likes within 10 minutes, all from bots. There were no complaints.
Yeah, they were all bots too. Do you remember that? They were bots. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And that was only a few months after Leo Varadkar's suggestion in the Parliamentary Party meeting that they should create a bot farm to increase their social media likes. So all this is completely one-sided. And without X, we are in a deep, dark place in this country.
Yeah, it is a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because, Sean, there is no doubt, and I will agree, that I've seen some stuff on X that's completely outrageous, completely untrue and outrageous. But in saying that, I've also learned a lot from X, stuff that I didn't know, and oh my God, I didn't know that, or I didn't know that. And I mentioned the example yesterday of Grip Media putting up the story about the referendum and the public submissions a year before, that it should have never happened in the first place. That's, a real revelation that should be covered in the mainstream media, but it's not. It was covered by Grip Media, and the only way they get it out is on X, because that's how they promote it. So it is really important to us too, isn't it?
Well, I think the points that are being made that are against X, on every single one of them, no matter what you accuse X of, it's been done by the government or the establishment at the same time. I mean, if we take out a newspaper today, we'll believe that the Algerian boxer is female.
Yeah, we would.
That there's XY chromosomes present. Without X, we wouldn't have had the Attorney General's advice the day before the referendums.
Yeah.
And every single thing you accuse the right wing or the big bad far right of on X is also being done by the left, by mainstream media, and by the government. There's obviously bad stuff that happens online, but I mean, I pay for Twitter. I feel it's worth £9 a month. They have my name, they have my address, they have my bank account details. I think that might be the route, that it's not publicly available, but behind the scenes that X or whoever have a copy of your passport or driver's license. I have no issue with that. But again, if you say something wrong, if they're accusing people on X of inciting hatred, they can go and get a judge to sign off. They can go and get the name of the person involved, and they can go and arrest them under the 1989 legislation. There's nothing that can or does happen in X that can't already be dealt with the right political will.
Mm. Well, there are individuals on X using VPNs and using internet cafes and using all sorts of ways of being undetectable, and they don't pay the $9.99. So we don't have their bank account identification. They have mine, by the way. I pay for it as well, although I don't get charged for some reason.
You'll create a situation there if they're in such a small minority that when they post, people just absolutely ignore them, and people are self-censoring anyway. If I went on and picked a member, a TD who wasn't Irish born, and said they were, a traditional slur against a Chinese person, I'll be piled on instantly on X by members of the left, and rightfully so. So the public has a way of self-censoring the really bad stuff, and they call it out, and it's not tolerated.
But equally, there are people, for example, Sean, I'm aware of individuals who post racist stuff on a regular basis, and they have their little army of thousands of followers who will like it and love it and post other comments. A lot of the videos completely out of context, for example, and just clearly racist. And that's the government's argument, that we can't be having that kind of stuff because it encourages other people to be equally as racist.
Well, then what are the guards doing about it? If I post something up that's genuinely racist online, I would expect a knock at my door. And if I don't get a knock at the door, that's the government and the Gardaí failing to do their jobs. It's not up to Elon Musk to sort what I do and don't say online. It's up to me to do that. And when I fail, it becomes a criminal offence and the guard should be at my door.
Do you think it's appropriate that, and people have commented that, over the last 24 hours in particular, is it appropriate that the CEO of X himself, Elon Musk, who's very open, very vocal, obviously, is it appropriate that he's posting political comments online?
It's good enough for Mark Zuckerberg, who's head of Meta, who the government absolutely loves because he follows their every word. He donates in multi-millions to the Democratic caucus over in the US. So, yeah, we have Kevin Backhurst out making comments in the last few weeks. We have members of Dáil Éireann commenting on Kelly Harrington online, whether it be good or bad. So if they can all do it, why shouldn't Elon Musk be able to say it?
I did see Kevin Backhurst, by the way, commenting in relation to the Kamala Harris satirical video. So it's quite clear that Kevin Backhurst is nailing his colours to the mast when it comes to American politics. But stay there for a second. Let me just go to Morgan. Morgan, hi. How are you doing?
Hi, no, good. How are you?
Good, Morgan. Yeah, the original thing obviously was with Elon Musk and his comment. Civil war is inevitable. Is that an opinion, or is that inciting kind of violence?
Well, no, it's an opinion, and it's probably the probability would probably be higher now than it's ever been. So it's probably a statement of fact. We've no outlet left in this country for any sort of dissent. Whatever is left is online, which is really pathetic when you think of it. That's the only place people can go to have express their opinions. And if they take that away, well then, the probability of a civil war increases further. So,
yeah, but
I don't think...
It says on my screen here, you're furious about something. What are you furious about?
Say again, sorry?
It says on my screen here, Morgan is furious. So why is Morgan furious?
Morgan's not furious. Morgan's very disappointed. At this point, though, is the amount of bootlickers in this country is really depressing. The fact that people think it's okay for the state to use violence, but then somehow if citizens react in a similar fashion, that's unforgivable. You can never use violence. That's just a nonsense. It's tragic that people have to use violence, but it's part of human nature, and it's there for a very good reason. When you're under attack, you've no other option. Words won't save you. We won't be allowed to use certain words in the next couple of months. So what other options do people have? And then if people don't have the right to defend themselves...
Well, no, I'm not disagreeing with you. Throughout history, by the way, violence has created peace. I know that sounds like a bit of an odd thing to say, right? But violence has created peace throughout history. I mean, a lot of times, when people don't get as far as they're supposed to get or they need to get from civilised protests, it does turn to violence. And I'm aware of that. And sometimes... But what we're seeing in the British streets at the moment is not so much just violence. It's just thuggery, Morgan. You know what I mean?
Well, but people have no outlet, people in the UK, we've been pretty lucky here in Ireland for the last 30 years. Things have been fairly peaceful. We haven't had to deal with the problems the UK have with mass immigration, a kind of dystopian future ahead of them, and an authoritarian government. And it's a class thing as well, which doesn't really get discussed. But the English white ethnic race in England, which is white people, I know we can't talk about race, they've essentially been, set adrift. Historically, the left looked after the interests of the poor working class in the UK. They set them adrift when they realised that all the working class really wanted was to have a better lifestyle. So they then moved their focus to the oppressed classes, immigrants, homosexuals, all that kind of cohort. So they've been set adrift. And magically, now there's this far-right threat. If that's all they have left is to go to the right. It's not even a right. Most working class people don't have the education around politics, so they don't even have an ideology at all. They're just fed up, they've been abandoned, and all they have left is themselves. And when there's nothing else left, when push comes to shove, eventually it comes down to violence. You can be the most intellectual person in the world, but when you don't have that, when everything's taken away from you, it's just all that's left is violence. And we won't win either. And the working class won't win. The state has all the power, all the weapons, everything at their disposal. So for them to be frightened of a violent threat from the working class is ridiculous. It's just they don't have a chance, you know.
It's a fair point. Yeah, it is a fair point, and I understand sometimes people feel, and Sean, it is fair to say people get so frustrated and feel that their only option sometimes is violence to draw attention to themselves when they feel they've nothing else, when they have no legitimate recourse, and that seems to be the way people feel at the moment, Sean, both here and in the United Kingdom at the moment.
Yeah, they do, but I think they need to take it a step further and think what happens when they do. They're giving the government the excuse. I mean, last year it was misinformation online, then it was far right, now it's inciting hatred. The guys go and set fire to Crown Paint's factory with an asbestos roof, releasing the fibres into the local community. I mean, they're real heroes. Like, they just need to take a step back and realise, are they furthering their goals by taking it that step too far? And, you know, protest by itself works. Registering to vote and actually going out to do it would be an awful lot bigger statement than going out and setting fire.
I don't know, with the political class in this country at the moment, I don't think it matters who you vote for anymore. You know, there was a time I would have believed that, but you know, even if everyone in the country came out to vote tomorrow, or you know, in the next election, for example, if everyone registered and everybody voted, what are your options? All of the parties are pretty much singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah,
no, you're right. And we have
organised and got together.
At least in America, you have a choice of Democrats and Republicans, which are two completely polar opposite views. Over here, we don't have that choice. And we're actually underrepresented. As somebody rightly pointed out, say, for example, even in the European elections and the local elections recently, you know, roughly 20% of people who turned out voted for people like me, for example. So 20% of people voted for people who were on the right. Yet, we don't have people on the right in the Dáil.
I don't know, Niall. If you take just yourself and Aisling Considine, who would be almost 100% aligned on just about everything, you have enough first preference and certainly transfers between you for one of you to get elected. Now, if you multiply that by the country of the Conservative options, there was the possibility of getting a serious amount of people elected, but the people on the Conservative side are way too split and way too cranky to get together and do it. Just in Dublin alone, in one MEP election, if you two had a pact there, one of you gets elected. And that's not a dig. I appreciate both candidates, you know that. But if you look at it absolutely countrywide, the amount of votes that were available to people who were Conservative or Independent, there were enough to have taken nearly 30%.
No, but I get the point you're making, and maybe that's something I should have done with Aisling, by the way, and ain't to at the time, right? But that wasn't up to me, obviously, because I was with Independent Ireland at the time, so that decision wasn't mine. But in relation to the fact that I'm saying is, if you look at the amount of votes that were given over to Conservative or right-wing candidates, both local and European election, right, you would imagine then that based on that, you know, in Dublin, for example, I had overall, after the second count and the final count was like whatever, 12.5%, 13% of the vote, right? She had about 6 or 7% of the vote. And then the rest or others down below who would have been considered Conservative or right probably had about 4 or 5%. So there was over 20% of the vote for Conservative or right-wing candidates, if that's what you want to call it. So why is 20% of the Dublin population voted for that? So why are they not represented in the Dáil? So this is how politics doesn't work. Do you understand what I'm saying?
It does work. Hang on. At the moment, you're looking at Sinn Féin and 13% who've returned a lot of seats in the local European elections. In the Dáil itself, in the makeup, you have two parties in around 20% who are in power. And the tail wagging the dog qualified with 6% in the last general election are likely to fall below that again. So it is possible. But your transfer patterns have to be right. And you can't have 20 right-wing candidates running against 3 left-wing candidates and then complain that the vote is split and no one got into power.
Okay, well, stay there for a second, sorry, and I'll come back to Morgan as well in a moment. Let me go to Dave as well. Dave, hi, how are you?
What's the crack?
Dave, just very quickly, because I'm way over time now. I'm actually 40 minutes over time, would you believe? Just in relation to, you know, the original question, is posting online, you know, civil war is inevitable? Is that inciting violence?
See, I think it depends on who's posting it and how it can be interpreted. You know, I mean, it's like, like a guy like Elon Musk posting something like that. Like, there's going to be enough people that follow him think, oh shit, you know, civil war probably is going to happen. You know, there's a lot of, like, he has a massive following. And I mean, it's not the first time Elon Musk has said something stupid anyway. Like, I kind of don't understand this fanboy mentality around Elon Musk. Guy's a bit of a shithead, to be honest with you. I mean, we just look into, like, how he runs his Tesla factories, or he paid 50 grand to a private investigator.
That sounds like incitement to me there. You want to be careful.
No, that's just an opinion, lads. No,
well,
but
you have to be careful these days. What you say, like you might get a knock on the door. You have to be very careful.
I'm shaking in my boots. But think about the divers the divers that rescue those kids in that cave in Thailand. I mean, he made out that one of them was a pedo because the guy basically said, "Go away, you with your stupid submarine idea. We'll take the kids out." Elon Musk is one of these guys who has such a massively overinflated ego because he thinks he's the smartest person in the room that anybody who goes against him or tries to make him look stupid, he takes a personal vendetta against them and tries to ruin them. I really don't understand this fanboy mentality around him. Like the likes of Elon.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Dave, he's done a lot of good for the world too. You know, okay, I mean, people who are extremely wealthy like Elon Musk is worth, whatever, $230 billion. It's kind of incalculable, really, to be honest with you. You know, obviously they're not like you and me. You know what I mean?
But what good exactly has he done for the world? I mean, like, don't get me wrong.
Firstly, the first good thing I'd say he's done for the world is he took X out of the hands of a bunch of lefties.
Right, and Twitter has turned into an even bigger cesspool now than it was before.
He gave Ukrainian soldiers free satellite communication, obviously using his, Starlink. So, you know, that's something else. He gives a lot of money to charity. He's got 10 kids. He's got about 10 kids who absolutely fucking hate him. His Tesla factories. I wouldn't say they all hate him, but certainly one or two of them do.
Okay, the majority of them. Okay, yeah. His Tesla factories have been they've been described as frat houses, rampant sexual harassment, and racism.
Yeah, well, I don't know the evidence you have in relation to that, but let's take it away from him personally. But let's say, you don't like him, okay? I get it, Dave. You don't like him. Fair enough.
No, it's not that I don't listen. It's not that I don't like him. I couldn't give a shit about Elon Musk. It's what annoys me is that everybody's common sense seems to go out the window in regards to like people like Elon Musk or political figures or stuff like that. You know, they treat them like they're the saviors of humanity. When in reality, we could all die and they couldn't care less. To them, we're nothing but playthings. You know, he bought Twitter and said he was going to make it a town square for free speech. And I was like, brilliant. Since he's taken it over, it has become even worse than what it was. It's just nothing but rampant disinformation from both sides of the political spectrum and just straight up pornography on all of them.
What would you like? What would you like? Would you like social media monitoring?
Do you know what I would like? I would like for social media companies and tech giants to actually be held accountable for the wrongs that they do. I would like them to be treated like public. If misinformation is spread, rampant misinformation, they can't, your sources can't be cited. It's very obvious that it's all bullshit and it's all nonsense, that they're held to task and that they're fined. That's what I would like. Facebook was blamed by the UN.
What about your personal responsibility? What about your personal responsibility? Like, shouldn't you if you express your opinion, do you fact check all your opinions before you express them?
No. There's a difference. Oh, 1 second. There's a difference between an opinion and sharing stuff that is blatantly false. There is, and I am quite happy to stand by anything I say. And I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy that if I say something that it's wrong and I'm found out to be wrong, I put my hand up.
But to be fair, Dave, civil war is is inevitable. Is an opinion. You don't need a fact check for that.
But the difference is there's a massive difference between Niall Boylan saying civil war is inevitable and a guy like Elon Musk saying civil war is inevitable.
The difference is 169 million followers. That's the difference.
Yeah, and of that 169 million people, how many of them are that fucking mad in the head that they might start to act upon something like that? You know, it's called being responsible.
So hang on. I've had this argument for years when it comes to, say, rappers or singers or, so somebody turns around and says, some particular rapper brings out a song saying, kill all white people or something like that. And I go, that's a bit outrageous. And they go, well, no, it's not his fault he's so popular. You know what I mean? And you don't have to take it seriously. After all, everybody knows that's not true. It's just the words of a song. So, what I'm saying to you is...
No, come here. Listen, you're picking me up wrong here. I think Elon Musk, I think he is quite entitled to say what he wants. I would just like to see the people that have the kind of power and the kind of sway that they have. I would just like to see them exercise a bit more cop on and just think
Okay, very quickly, Morgan, because I have very little time and I need to go to Bernie because she's going to kill me. Go on.
Okay, right. Dave, do you trust the government?
No.
then why in the name of Christ would you give them the power to regulate social media? Do you not get the contradiction?
I know, and it's a double-edged fucking sword. Unfortunately, these people need to be regulated, but then again, the people who are going to regulate them, you wouldn't fucking trust them either. I do, I get that, but when you read, when you read, like, look, we won't even talk about Twitter. No, one second, we'll talk about Facebook for a second, right? Facebook has been blamed for being complicit in genocide in Myanmar because of all the misinformation that was spread on their platform. It wasn't done intentionally by Facebook. The reason is because there's so many people who use these sites, there is no way we can actually, fact check everything. There aren't enough people in the world to fact check all this stuff. That's what I'm saying. This is the problem with social media. The cat's out of the bag. I don't personally believe that we can actually regulate.
I'll just say two more things. Right, civil war existed before social media, right? So if social media wasn't here, we'd still have the same problem. So that's done. There's a very simple fix to this, civil war is inevitable, and it's one of semantics. We just ban the word is, right? Take the word is out of the equation, and we put in maybe. So civil war, maybe.
See, now you're just being silly.
I'm not being silly. It's, there's a thing called maybe logic, and you might look it up, and people might look up Robert Anton Wilson, and it's to do with semantics. If you, instead of saying the word is, like Niall is a racist, we could say Niall may be a racist, or Niall is being racist at this particular moment in time. I'm not saying you are, Niall, by the way. But just get rid of the word is.
Yeah, it's like years ago when we accused, what was it, Bertie Ahern of telling untruths rather than lies.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So there's always a maybe,
Okay, well, hang on, lads. I'm running out of time rapidly here. Sorry, and I need to go to Bernie. Bernie, hi, how are you?
Grand. I just think it's an opinion he voiced, and I think that he should be held accountable for the way kids are being allowed to access his media platforms. That's just my opinion.
No, I wouldn't disagree with that aspect of it. I think all social media needs to be responsible in relation to children and people being on it. I don't think, Bernie, to be fair, that that's the biggest problem on Twitter. It would be children. TikTok would be the biggest perpetrators of allowing children on.
Yeah, that should be taken off completely. And that's just me. I mean, I have no idea. I'm not on any of those platforms. I just watch a YouTube video. However, I do think that he should be looked at for maybe modifying those areas where children are accessible and fix that. Because the world war is not inevitable, hopefully, but the way the governments are around the world seem to be reacting is we have no choices as people who have laid down and worked our place and got on with life. All of a sudden now we're exposed to so much stuff that we know nothing about. And it's really scary.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about what's going on in any other country in the world. I'm just about coping what's going on up the road here today. So why do I need to be now worried and focused on what worldwide fear is going to be instigated now?
But there was a good point made by Morgan there, that as much as Dave, on one hand, is kind of right and it needs to be regulated, all the misinformation and stuff like that. But on the other hand, who regulates it? Do you trust the government to regulate it? I don't.
I wouldn't trust them with the key at my back door. I mean, they're useless.
Well, this is the problem. We have lost faith in everything at this stage. So yes, social media, is a bit of a toxic landscape at the moment. But the people we're relying on to fix that are people we don't trust anyway, because they have their own personal interests at heart anyway. They're the ones who want to regulate it in their favour.
So what do we do as a nation? We go back to the drawing board and rebuild it. Start from scratch. We don't have to accept everything at face value. We go back and say, no, that doesn't seem to be working now. Let's go back and revisit something else. Because we have to, for the future of moving forward, we have to be doing everything in our power now to get it right so that we don't leave this mess for future generations. We need to solve it.
I would agree with you, but I think we are leaving a huge mess for future generations, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're leaving a whole that we can't fix. And we need to start sitting and being real and being honest and open and saying, yes, we need to sit down and all of us work together, not just one group here, one group there. We're not all far left and far right. There is people who are trying to make a solid, honest future for everybody that's equal in all parts. That's what we need.
Bernie, listen, thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry for squeezing you in right at the end. I do apologise.
No problem at all.
I do apologise. Thank you very much indeed. All right. Thank you to everybody who got involved in today's show. And by the way, that's why it's important. That's why this show is important. Everybody today had an opinion. I didn't censor anybody's opinion. Obviously, I keep a list out to make sure people don't defame each other or something stupid like that. But in saying that, you all have an opinion. You're all entitled to opinion. It's really important all your opinions are put out there. And, what really angered me the other day, and I kind of got a bit angry because As you know, I told you I ended up in A&E in hospital because I was in serious pain and everything else. But I still came in and I crawled up the stairs, because it's up the stairs to the studio. I literally had to stop halfway and rest while I crawled up the stairs to get in here to make sure the show went out. The producer realised I was so bad that you might have noticed on Monday, he put the phone number up on the screen halfway through and left it there because I was like this and I couldn't even focus. I couldn't concentrate. But I still did it because I believe it's really important that you have your opinion. And I'm back here today after being in A&E last night. Was it last night? The night before now? I'm losing track of time. Anyway, night before, I think. Anyway, I'm loaded up with medication. Thankfully, I'm okay. But the thing is, I believe it's important that you have your opinion. There's 3 of us work on this show every single day. RTE got 725 million to produce, in a lot of play times, by the way, horse shit. Some of the times it's good. I will give you that. Prime time can be good sometimes. You know, the investigative reporting, the sports coverage can be very good. But a lot of the time, it's people overspending. That's costing your taxpayers money on 25 quid for a pair of flip-flops and tickets, thousands on tickets to gigs every year. Overspending by RTE of your taxpayers' money. If I even got, or if we were even given the amount of money that was overspent in 1 year, overspent, if it was given to us, we could make this so much better. But we don't. We get nothing. Absolutely nothing. And you know, I said it the other day that it pisses me off to some degree. And don't take this personally because I appreciate every donation and every subscription that people give us. And those of you who have subscribed or donated, thank you so much. But for those of you who haven't and who watch the show every single day or listen to it every single day, if you even gave us 5 cents every time you watch the show or listen to the show, 5 cents, we could afford to do something so much better. We could bring you so much more. We could have a reporter out on the streets. We could do loads of different stuff that we couldn't afford to do right now. You get to see it for free. We don't charge you anything, nothing. Now that's going to have to change because we can't continue to do this because every month at the end of the month, we have to have a conversation, the 3 of us, about how much money have you got, how much money have you got, so we could just pay the bills. We really appreciate those of you who've donated, but enough of you haven't done that. So please support us. Support us if you can, unless you want to see an end to this. And I don't want to see an end to it. You know, we did it at the start because we have a passion for it, a passion for the truth, a passion for giving you a platform. Just like Elon Musk gives you a platform, we want to give you a platform too to have your opinion. But that platform comes at a cost. We have to pay bills, you know? So please, please support us. Go online to niallboylan.com. And don't forget, by the way, I don't have one here, but we have our smug mugs. And we promise that we will send, and we still do, by the way, for everybody who subscribes, either to yearly or monthly subscription, we send out we pick one random person each day, and I send them out the smug mugs. I don't have one. Why haven't I got one here? Anyway, we do send them out the smug mugs, and I'll show you the mugs tomorrow. I'll bring out a few of them out to the studio tomorrow, and I'll show you. So if you subscribe today, or you donate, or you subscribe yearly or monthly, we randomly pick one person, the system picks one person, and we send them out a smug mug. Because there they are on the screen. All right, thank you. So that's what the smug mug looks like. The Niall Boylan podcast. And on the back of the mug, by the way, I'll show you tomorrow, it says female adult, or was it woman, adult, human, female, is what it says on the back of it. So please do subscribe today, and you're in a chance of getting one of those mugs. We'll send one out to you. All right? So go to the website, niallboylan.com, subscribe or donate, and you're in the draw. You can donate a $5 or 5 million, whatever you want. This is the longest show we've ever had. It was meant to go on for an hour. It's now 2 hours. Thank you very much indeed. We shall talk to you again tomorrow. Go to the website. Do it now. Subscribe to us. Support us. If you believe in us and you listen to us and you're watching right now, subscribe. Or else just donate. It's only once a month. It's a couple of quid. And it helps us to stay here to let you listen to this every single day. niallboylan.com. Talk to you again tomorrow at 12. Until then, have a great day.
The multi-award-winning Niall Boylan podcast.
Oh, by the way,
listen live on Facebook, YouTube, and all the usual live stream services. To get in touch, just WhatsApp or text 085 100 2255. The Niall Boylan podcast. They told me to shut up. Available for download from all your usual platforms.